Hello everyone and welcome. Now the Zionist apartheid regime of Tel Aviv continues its barbaric savagery throughout West Asia. Utilizing the most sophisticated weapons in America's lethal arsenal, it continues targeting civilian infrastructure, including residential units, medical facilities, government offices, a prison, oil and gas and water infrastructure, and civilian nuclear installations. And no, this is not Gaza or Lebanon or Syria, it is the Islamic Republic. And while the Israeli regime has sold to international media and world leaders this narrative of targeted attacks on Iranian military figures and military installations, facts on the ground have pointed to a more disturbing reality. An unprovoked campaign of aggression that has left homes and offices destroyed, women, children, and non-combatants killed. And this is the focus of today's Spotlight program. And now for our guests. Joining us, Mr. Saib Shah, author and commentator, joining us out of Belfast, and Mr. Sayed Mohsen Abbas, journalist and political commentator, joining us from London. Hello, gentlemen, and I'd like to welcome the both of you to the program here. Pleasure to have you both on. I guess let's start with Sayed in London. Sayed, Iran's judiciary spokesperson just earlier today, Asghar Jahangir, said in a residential area of the capital, Tehran, Evin prison was targeted, which led to, quote, 71 people martyred, including administrative staff, youth doing their military service, detainees, family members there to visit those detainees, and the neighbors who lived in the prison vicinity. Your initial thoughts, if you could, on Israel's reckless targeting, once again, of people who are perhaps apolitical, not military, and no threat in any fashion or manner.
Well, it's a continuation of what Israel's been doing ever since its dastardly birth, basically. It's done nothing but torture, pillage, beat up surrendered combatants, kill prisoners throughout its history. So this is not new. However, of course, what they did in Evin prison is just another indication of how there are no rules for this lawless, savage entity. The reality is also that they didn't forgive hospitals. I mean, that's another trend that they'd already set in Gaza. Not a single hospital remains in Gaza which wasn't pounded and hammered and destroyed or totally annihilated by the Israelis. They didn't stop from raping surgeons, even, taking them into custody and then raping, torturing, and killing them, indeed. So there is no limit to what this savage, barbaric entity can do. It's supported by America, who also did the same. Who can forget what they did in Iraq within the prisons there? And so rendition and all these concepts are all part of the American CIA playbook, and the Israelis and the Mossad do it just as badly, just as nastily. But it's not new. 600 civilians, largely, I think, according to my estimates, have been killed, out of which, again, 10–20% are children. And indeed, the commander of the army, Commander Bakri, today, whose funeral, I think, took place over the last day or two, his wife and his daughter were also killed. So they deliberately select very accurate murder and assassination, not only of military commanders or leaders, they deliberately go for families as well.
Thank you there, Sayed. And Saib Shah, welcome to the program, and thank you for your patience there. Pleasure to have you on. Mr. Shah, now, Le Monde, a French news outlet, posted earlier that since June 13th, Israel has been carrying out strikes on Iranian military and strategic infrastructure. These attacks have, however, also caused significant civilian casualties. 2 hospitals were hit, one in western city of Kermanshah and another in the capital, Tehran. If I could, your initial thoughts as well on Israel's so-called targeted campaign. And really quick, to Sayed's point, according to Iran's health ministry, 627 people, latest figures, have been killed and more than 4,800 others injured in Israel's unprovoked aggression against the country.
Hello to you and to your guests and to your audience. To follow from what Sayed said, Israel bombed entire residential complexes and residential towers to assassinate one scientist or a writer or a thinker or a military commander. It bombed hospitals, scientific centers, prisons. As today, we hear the news of 71 in a prison being killed, and the television headquarters. I was online at that minute when they hit the Iranian Broadcasting Corporation in there. It was horrendous what they did. The assassinating and murdering senior military commanders and the scientists, and they are targeting strikes against ordinary civilians, including women and children. And then, of course, later on, the United States of America showed its hand, not just in supplying the Zionist entity and even give it coordinates or refueling its fighter jets, the F-35s and lots. It's and bombing the 3 Iranian nuclear sites. The United States of America declares jump on the wagon and like they done it. And that is a grave violation, as we know, of the United Nations Charter, international law, and the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So Iran didn't start any of that, didn't start the war, but the Iranian response showed the strength and the might of the Iranian. Iran showed that might and strength because it witnessed what the Zionist entity is carrying in the Gaza Strip or in the South Lebanon, where for 21 months they were heinous crimes, genocide in the go, and they thought the shock and awe initiative strike on Tehran, they're going to shock the state and the system to turn it into dust like what they turned into Gaza. They were mistaken, and that's where came the true response 3 have to show massive blows which infiltrated and pierced into the heart of their own multi-layered defense system, which led by American soldiers on the ground of the Zionist entity with sad systems. And as well, we've seen the Europeans and even Jordan trying to defend the Zionist entity by targeting the Iranian response from the drones and the missiles.
Thank you. And Sayyid Mohsen Abbas, I actually appreciate Mr. Saib Shah for taking the conversation to the 3 nuclear facilities targeted by the Americans along with the Israelis. Now, the nuclear sites targeted in Natanz, about 135 miles, about 200 kilometers southeast of Tehran, nearby Isfahan nuclear facility, and Fordo uranium enrichment plant near the city of Qom. Now, these are 3 major cities. Tehran has around a 10 million person population, and throughout the workday, it even gets up to between 14 to 16 million people in the Iranian capital, Qom, with about 2 million, and Isfahan with about 2.5 million. We're talking somewhere in the ballpark of 16 to 20 million people in direct risk of radiation exposure if these strikes on these facilities had been more successful. And unfortunately, that's a lot of civilians to endanger and not have to answer for, isn't it?
Well, it's shocking, really, that the IAEA hasn't launched any kind of huge investigation. They've not even condemned what the Americans have done. They've not condemned what Israel has done. They've not investigated what Israel has in terms of a nuclear stockpile. And of course, this is all because the IAEA are 100% complicit. And I'm glad to hear that the Iranian parliament has finally decided to pretty much kick them into touch, because they are essentially a spy agency. They come in, they take notes, and they go and give information back to the Israelis and the Americans. And indeed, it could be argued that the IAEA's information that they provided to the Israelis contributed to the destruction and to the endangerment of the entire region with the destruction of the nuclear facilities. You know, the Qataris have said, look, if you do this, our water supplies, our lives, etc., are also going to be shut down within a matter of days. It's a hugely stupid and absolutely irresponsible action. And the IAEA and the Americans, of course, know this, and they're all complicit in violation of international law. This is against any kind of course, rule and regulation. But then what does Israel or America worry about in terms of rules and regulations. Israel ratified the Geneva Convention on July 6, 1951, but they never abided by it. They're subject to the International Criminal Court. You know, the Palestinians acceded to the Rome Statute, and since then the ICJ, or the ICC rather, have done nothing to pull them up. Organizations with their special rapporteurs from the United Nations, like the Human Rights Watch, Médecins Sans Frontières, Amnesty International, all of them have condemned, and not only condemned, but they've been accusing regularly Israel of these kinds of war crimes. But going to attacking the nuclear sites is a new level of stupid, isn't it? Because if Iran did the same and hits the major sites of Dimona in Israel, what would Israel say then? I bet there'll be a hue and cry, and they'll condemn Iran as a dangerous nuclear threat, even more so then. But of course, this is all part of the hypocrisy and the lies and the double standards of the Zionist Western Empire. Iran is going to be wasting its time talking to any of these institutions to try and bring Israel to book, although it must go through the motions, I guess. But the reality is that all of them need to be shut out. None of them can be trusted. Negotiations become a joke because you can't negotiate with somebody who's got a loaded gun, not a loaded gun, but a loaded nuclear set of weapons at your forehead. That's the reality of what's gone on. The only thing that's saving Iran is the fact that those ballistic missiles have hit Weizmann Science Research Center. They've shattered the Israeli intelligence services in several places, Beersheba and others. They've also, of course, knocked out many of the military installations and the air bases. So Iran is continuing to fight a moral war against an Israel and America who are completely going to fight an immoral war. I think this has to be reviewed, because if you carry on giving these people a chance, then the reality is they're only going to load their gun harder, having worked out what your vulnerabilities are, and they're going to come out and exact revenge. But this heinous crime of 4,000, 5,000 Iranian civilians in hospital today, and all those Palestinians who now it's all coming out, of course, Danny, I've been saying this, of course, for the last year and a half, that those stupid figures of 45,000 Palestinian dead were a dumbing down. The reality in the latest statistics in the Harvard University, I think 377,000 Palestinians are now dead. That's the kind of the villains you're looking at, and Iran is looking at the same kind of thing in a full-on war, to be honest.
Thank you, Said. And Mr. Saib Shah, I'd like to actually have you speak on the same subject. Just earlier, we had a letter addressed to the UN Secretary General and President of the Security Council by Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi, urging the Security Council to acknowledge the aggressor's subsequent responsibility. Araghchi stated the IAEA safeguarded nuclear facilities became a target of attacks of the Israeli regime and the United States in grave violation of the UN Charter, the NPT, and the IAEA instruments and resolutions, while the IAEA has a mouthful quite often to say about Iran on much lower scale of threat posed by the country to anyone on this planet. The risks and ramifications of these attacks are getting little or no traction, the traction that they warrant. Why?
Exactly. I want to take it a little bit further. Why the IAEA head who goes to and discuss matters with a non-member state of the IAEA, non-member of the NPT, even the Zionist entity, and why they get information from it, and why they make political reports, reports which they are politicized to justify for that Zionist entity any kind of aggression against Iran. So we are dealing with international bodies who's been run or been even spying tools for the Zionist entity and for the Trump's administration. We have to understand this white supremacist elite way of thinking. In 1946, before the Zionist entity declared its takeover of Palestine, the French were supplying a research and nuclear center to the Aragon. Aragon at the time was even considered by the British a terrorist organization. So when you see a white French elite and a state supplying the Zionists with with the nuclear research center. That means that doesn't matter to them. The French did that and done their tests on the Algerians in the 50s. They do to get the Algerian people together to see the radiation with their nuclear testing, how does it affect the Algerians. And the same thing they thought of the people on the region when they give that to the Zionists. Another point, maybe it's far-fetched, but we saw 3-4 days ago a little bit of video of a white Zionist from Belarus holding an Iranian child, 3 to 4 years of age, and smash his body to the ground. That's how they think of the people in the region, on the level of a child or level of a state. These people cannot be trusted at all. Their international apparatus or organization or order is there only to enslave the global south and to maintain the interests of the north, the global north, which is run by white supremacists these days, and even fascists, if I want to be more clear. So we understand the Iranian Foreign Minister a couple of days ago, he confirmed the excessive and serious damage happened to the Iranians' nuclear sites, which is that was attacked by the Zionist entity and the United States of America as well. So the attack displayed how deceptive this administration is, who Iran was engaged with them in negotiation about the nuclear program. How can you sit at a table with someone and then stab you in the back with a knife through an attack? So I mean, this kind of governments, entities, and bodies, it doesn't matter to them. And they don't adhere to any of the norms we know in international law or in United Nations Charter or in anything to do with Geneva, even convention, whatever. Like what we noticed, the Zionist entity attacking the civil infrastructure, and the U.S. proved once again, as I said, they encourage that, and they don't adhere to any norms which we know. So these guys cannot be trusted whatsoever. Today's world we live in, you have to be able to protect yourself and to deter such aggressive people.
Thank you, Mr. Shah. And say that's an interesting point. While the Israelis, they speak of these targeted assassinations, I'm really not sure you can call a nuclear scientist a non-civilian target. Now, the onus is on the Israelis to prove that their proof is beyond delusion that these scientists, whether they be men or women, that they are part of a system that is trying to concoct a nuclear bomb to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, that is what they're using as pretext to send bombs and missiles into people's living rooms, killing them, their relatives, and their neighbors.
Yes, well, we've seen they've targeted schools, teachers, they've targeted journalists specifically, using the AI and the modern technology systems that they have, using their spyware and all their cyber kind of technology. It's an entire arsenal of modern technological gadgetry which is serving this this kind of evil entity. And of course, there is no morality and there's no ethics. Iran, of course, follows Islamic ethics, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, clearly said, don't even burn down the trees, don't harm civilians, don't just violate anything to do with the ecology, let alone the actual human beings. Animals were protected. These are principles of like the old school traditional. And actually what this bears out is what you're seeing is, on the one side, people of Iran and the establishment of Iran operating on the basis of a morality which all civilizations would recognize and acknowledge. In fact, the Geneva Convention and all of these, it could be argued, are all built on the basis of the Prophet Muhammad's own charter, in Medina, in terms of human rights, etc. But let's not go too far into that, because a lot of our audience doesn't understand Islam. But this is what drives Ayatollah Khamenei's decision not to even have a nuclear bomb. Why any other nation on the world, if they had the capability of making the nuclear bomb, by now they would have done it. They wouldn't have hesitated. That's the truth of the matter. And even now, the big question is that what is required to create an absolute deterrent? Is nuclear weapons now the only option for Iran in order to make sure that Israel doesn't do the Samson option, with its own nuclear weapons, and doesn't violate Iranian sovereignty, doesn't try to create psyops, doesn't try to assassinate children and women in their own bedrooms while they sleep. What will it take to bring this rogue, savage entity to book? And I think that Iran, personally, of course, I'm not that spiritually elevated. My reaction would be for the survival of the Iranian people and its sovereignty, you'd have to do whatever they're doing. So does that mean now that it would be okay for Iran to also go and assassinate Benjamin Netanyahu or his cabinet or his military leaders when they're sleeping with their family and their children? Would the world find it acceptable if the Islamic Republic of Iran set off on that targeted killing, the assassinations, the way Israel have done? Would it be acceptable for Iran to be targeting all the hospitals in Tel Aviv deliberately? Would the world then continue to keep its silence? I don't think so.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, Mr. Shah. Really quick, there seems to be a lot wrong with how the world is responding and has been responding to Israel's actions, its aggressions, policies in West Asia against civilian populations, most specifically, of course, the Palestinians, but also against everyone else in the region and beyond. And then the high-stakes manipulation of Western political apparatus that allows the regime to send rockets and missiles into people's living rooms, into schools, mosques, and hospitals.
You see, there is a lot of racism within the international community when it comes to the global south, as I said. Even when a lot of people, they sympathize with what happens in Palestine, they feel, even within some of them feel it's white complex. They feel they are more civilized and feel sorry for people and should at least say a nice word about it. This is the wrong attitude which engulf all West Europe. If we can take that farther, Trump just said yesterday, I think, or the day before, if a future intelligence report showed any conclusion that Iran enrichment enriching of uranium maybe can be salvaged, it should be attacked. The Zionist entity, Katz, defense minister, he told his army they should maintain Israel air superiority over Iran. One, and two, to prevent any nuclear and missile development in Iran. Three, respond to any Iranian support of terrorist activity, they say, in the region. So you are dealing with two states, they still at war, even if they are talking, they reach a ceasefire with Iran. This is where Iran should find preventive measures to put to these criminals a stop, to protect, as my colleague Sayed said, the Iranian nation who came to the streets during the attacks, galvanized the support behind their leadership and demanded the leadership to strike into the heart of Tel Aviv, and they managed to do that. That kind of dignified, honorable people deserve to be protected from such thugs.
Thank you both for joining us on the program here, and stay safe to both of you. Saib Shah joining us out of Belfast, and also Saeed Mohsen Abbas joining us from London. And viewers, thanks for tuning in. This brings us to the conclusion of your Press TV Spotlight program. Stay safe and goodbye for now.